All right, Stephen Holder is here. We talked to your colleague Zach Kiefer a little bit earlier. The whole overwhelming thought here is always going to be about Luck and his health. But I'll be honest with you, when I was talking to Frank a little bit earlier, he's kind of sold me on where this thing is right now. I mean, and before I was told that, it was fine anyway, but he certainly has sold me with it. Has he sold you?
Yeah, listen, I don't sense any panic from the inside. When I talk to people, we talk to them publicly, you don't sense it. When you talk to them privately, you don't sense it. And I think if this thing were more serious, I would hope there'd be some panic. You know what I'm saying? Because I sure as hell would be. And the one thing I will say is, I think Andrew even said this. He said, right now he can't play elite football. And that's something he feels like is important to him, right? So he's trying to get back there. And I would say that's important. That's an important point to note because an average Andrew Luck is not going to get it done. They need him to be an elite quarterback. He's got to be – listen, all of these projections about this team are based around the assumption that he's going to play at an elite level. So he needs to do whatever he needs to do that because otherwise that's what their hopes are pinned on.
That's Stephen Holder with us, so we're not going to see him in any preseason game.
I doubt it.
We're not going to see him in any practice out here with the Browns, anything like that. So it's just going to be, here's the season. Take off and go with it.
Well, we'll see. I think that –
because that's what I think too.
Yeah, listen, I don't expect him to play in the preseason. I think the question right now is, does he, after the Buffalo game, is he in a position to come out here and do something? I don't mean go up and face Myles Garrett necessarily out here in practice against the Browns. I'm not talking about that per se. But is he healthy enough to go out and run 7-on-7 and take some steps forward, right? That's the question. And we don't know that yet. I would have been surprised if he was going to be out here this week. I thought that would have been a surprise. I'm not surprised he didn't make it out here this week. That would have been surprising to me just because before this you're talking about he had a 3 or 4 day layoff, and if this thing's been lingering as long as it has, I would expect that it was going to take more time than that to get it back to where it needs to be. So we'll see. There's some chance for next week, but I'm not banking on it. No.
Yeah, I'm not either. I think you're not going to see him until the start of the season.
Well, he certainly ain't playing in a preseason game. That is not happening.
No, that's not happening at all.
Yeah.
So, Stephen Holder is with us. All right, moving away from that just for a second, and we were talking to Frank a little bit earlier about a lot of things that are going on here. I was impressed today, and I don't know if it means anything, but like Jonathan Williams kind of popped off at least today. I know Rock Ya-Sin has been a subject for a lot of you guys as far as what the rookie has done. Anybody else making some waves impressed you to this point?
So one guy who's starting to show some fight is Reese Fountain. He had a big play earlier today, and he's had a couple of those, I think, in each of the past couple of days. And he's due for that because I hadn't seen anything from this kid. I think for the first week I really hadn't seen anything from him. I still can't tell you he's making the team, okay, because they're stacked there at wide receiver. But with Campbell still down, dealing with that hamstring and injuries always being a possibility, you got to have somebody waiting in the wings if need be. And again, the book's not closed on this. Reese Fountain can still make the team. He's just got to keep fighting. But he had to show a pulse, and he hadn't done that. He's doing that now, and I like what I see from that kid. I think he's got a shot. And this is another guy we've talked about, I'm sure, but Denico Autry, I think – yeah, I'm just going to say this. Denico Autry, I think, has been the best player in this camp. Defensive tackle. The guy is just he's been the best player on the field. He's destroying this offensive line. And this is a good offensive line. So, granted, Ryan Kelly's out right now, and that's certainly a factor. But even before that, he was having his way. And I think that says more about him than it says about the offensive line. Because, this offensive line, they have demonstrated they're an elite unit. Well, he's going up and having his way with those guys. So I'm just telling you, man, Denico Autry is primed for one hell of a season potentially. He's got to do it on Sundays, but he already did last year. I think now it's just a matter of taking the next step and being even more dominant.
Hey, Steven, do you think anything came of the workouts they had with Brandon Marshall and Mike Gillislee on Friday?
So the Gillislee workout clearly was related to the Spencer Ware development there. So they did sign another running back, and it wasn't Gillislee. So I think it's a look-see. You know, you see what you got. You consider all your options, right? So he was one of their options. There also in these situations. Keep in mind when those workouts get reported, they're almost invariably other guys working out we don't hear about. So,
but those are
the names,
veteran guys
but I'm
that
giving
we knew. Yeah,
right. I'm giving you the context because it's important. So what they're doing is they say, all right, we need to look at wide receivers. We need to look at running backs. Let's bring in 5 or 6 of each of them, and that's what you do. You give yourself some options to choose from. As it relates to Brandon Marshall, I really think that had a lot to do with Chris Ballard having a relationship with him that goes back to his days in Chicago. And Frank Reich said that. I mean, it was actually – I don't think he meant it this way, but it was kind of like, that's just Frank's guy, or that's just Chris's guy. He didn't – that's not the way he meant it. I'm not saying that. But you could certainly interpret it that way. I don't know. Is he doing him a favor? Was he really curious? I don't know.
Is there any perceived, in your opinion, interest that they might have in him with the way – this wide receiving group looks right now?
I don't think so. I think it's more of a situation where they hedge their bets because that's what you do when you're a smart personnel man. You're always thinking about 3 steps ahead, right? If this, then that. And if that, then this. And so that's what they're doing. I mean, they've got, we went in the draft room, for example, after the draft. Chris Ballard hosted some of us. And if you go in there, they've got all these boards up on the wall. And one of them is the personnel board of other teams or just available players as well. And so they track guys who are on rosters and guys who aren't on rosters. So if and when they need one, they know where to go.
All right, what are you writing about?
So I've got a couple things working. I got a piece on Kenny Moore that I'm really excited about. I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag completely, but I found the perfect comparison for Kenny Moore, and I'm working on a story about that. I also have a couple stories up today. One on just this defensive line. I talked about Autry earlier. They're an undersized defensive line. And I say undersized like, they're like 280 but at defensive tackle. But most times you're talking about 295, 300 at defensive tackle. These guys are doing it with slightly smaller guys, but that's by design. They're getting after the quarterback, getting in those gaps, and they want movement. And so it's basically I talked about how they have drawn up their defense and they're executing it with maybe guys who aren't ideal size, but it works for them in this scheme.
Stephen Holder of The Athletic. You're going to read it there. Thanks, my friend. I appreciate that.
Right,
Stop by anytime. I'll be back here again tomorrow as well.
All right, so will
Clearly, I mean, look at this crowd right here, right in front of me. Crowd. They broke early today, too, so that was even more interesting. Thank you, buddy. Stephen Holder with us.